Chocolate, the brown gold. 3 million tons are consumed worldwide per year, and almost half of it only in Europe. Everybody knows it and enjoys eating all different kinds of it. Pralines are appreciated gifts for Valentine's Day. Celebrations sweeten every party. Children love to search for chocolate brought by the Easter Bunny. This search makes them feel excited. But have they, or have we all, ever searched deeper in what lies behind our pleasure of chocolate? So let's have a closer look into chocolate production and the issues it causes.
Chocolate was already known to native South Americans such as the Mayas and Aztecs. However, they only used it as a drink called chocolate, and it was not sweetened but flavored, for example with chili or vanilla. It was considered as a gift of the gods and was reserved for the elite of the society. They also used it as a means of payment, mainly because of its high cultural value. The Spanish started to add cane sugar to sweeten the drink and transformed the original name to chocolate. A lot of historians assume that Hernán Cortés brought the chocolate to Europe, but this information is yet to be proved. The first chocolate factory, called Fry & Sons, was built in Bristol. They produced chocolate only manually and mixed cocoa powder and sugar with melted cocoa butter and filled it in forms. Finally, the chocolate we know today was created. 1869, the Swiss Henry Nestle developed a method to produce milk powder. Swiss Daniel Peter used Nestle's milk powder to create a new kind of chocolate. The result was milk chocolate. The cocoa fruit is harvested and opened with machetes. The pulp and the cocoa beans are removed and filled into big baskets. That's when the beans are fermented for about 2 to 6 days. During this process, the farmers separate the pulp. To ensure that dehydration can start after the fermentation, the beans are spread out on big mats or flat boxes where they are dried in the sun. After this procedure, the cocoa beans are cleaned and shipped all over the world for further processing. The next step is the roasting of the bean to achieve the right aroma and taste. Afterwards, the beans are powdered and heat energy is released. This heat melts the cocoa butter within the beans and forms a viscous mass, which is the basis for the chocolate production. Then, the shell is peeled off and the actual cocoa bean is revealed. The real production of our end product can only start after all these steps. First, the different ingredients are mixed. Now, the cocoa mass is still bitter and has to be conched. That means heated up to 80 degrees during several hours. Only now, flavors can unfold completely. After several rounds of cooling and reheating, the chocolate gets a velvet gloss. Finally, the chocolate is poured into different forms. After it cooled down, the chocolate is packed for the tray. The basic ingredients for the chocolate are cocoa mass, cocoa butter, milk, and sugar. They are added and mixed during the production of chocolate. Both cocoa cultivation and sugarcane production show similar aspects of global issues, such as child labor or deforestation. We will now focus on cocoa.
More than 40 million farmers work in the cocoa business in developing countries in the Equator Zone. Approximately 70% of the cocoa beans are exported from West Africa, and around 40% of it are supplied only by the Ivory Coast. The locals live and work under very poor conditions for the chocolate we all enjoy to eat. They live in small villages without electricity and water supply. And while the corrupt policemen control the dirt roads and force the villagers to pay a trespassing fee, the locals are even trapped in their hometowns. But as long as we keep paying such low prices in our supermarkets, there is little chance to improve the situation. They have to suffer for our happiness, and while we consume chocolate almost every day and take it for granted, most of the farmers on the plantations have never even tasted or seen a chocolate bar or pralines.
Low salaries of under $1 per day for the employing peasants lead to many problems. First of all, the child labor. Because even the employers have to live far below the poverty line and can't afford to pay regular workers, they employ children under age. Almost 2 million children work on cocoa plantations in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. Some of them are even smuggled from Mali or other neighboring countries. Around 800,000 of these 2 million underage workers have to work 12 hours a day with hazardous tools, carry heavy loads, are exposed to harmful chemicals, and therefore suffer injuries and diseases. What is the reason for this alarming development? Everything leads back to the poverty of the parents who can't afford to send their children to school, but have to leave them to the farmers of the cocoa plantations instead. Another reason is also said to be the Ebola epidemic, which spread in the neighboring country of Ivory Coast, Liberia, which caused a lack of foreign workers. Furthermore, up to 40% of the harvest is lost due to the lack of investment on care for the plantations, such as plant management, replacement of sick trees, and sustainable fertilizer. And for that reason, the crops decline and they don't get enough money to improve the situation. Can you see the vicious circle in that problem? Moreover, plantation companies buy land in South America to cut down 200,000 hectares per year of the rainforest in the Amazonas area in Peru, and also different national parks in Africa and Indonesia for their plantations. These trees grow 700 years, 70 meters up to the sky, and are cut down in only a few minutes. Although studies have proved that growing the cocoa next to the rainforest trees would be highly more effective and sustainable, cocoa trees are grown in monocultures on these great cleared plains. The leaves of the huge trees of the rainforest would provide a roof for rain and shadow, because the plant Theobroma cocoa can only convert 25% of the sunlight anyway. In addition to that, their roofs would prevent the ground from being flooded and eroded. Furthermore, the deforestation causes a huge CO2 emission. How come that deforestation takes place even though these national parks are under surveillance and some of them are even World Natural Heritage? The answer is corruption. As an Ivorian farmer admitted, the illegal is the normal. The same happens with the tracing of the illegal child work. Since 2001, the problem of forced and child labor in the cocoa business was covered up. Not much improvement can be accounted for until now. Although many of the West African countries and chocolate companies have signed a sanction to eliminate forced and child labor until 2008, not every non-compliance can be detected.
The best way to reduce child labor is to buy chocolate which is UTZ certified. UTZ stands for Universal Trade Zone and is a program and a label which emphasizes fair trade and sustainable farming of coffee, cocoa, and tea in particular. Their goal is to make sure that the people who produce the cocoa get a fair payment for their work and prevent child labor. If a brand is UTZ certified, the program ensures that the circumstances are good for the people that work for the company and we can consume the products with a good conscience. Unfortunately, this is not the ultimate solution because nobody can be in total control of what is happening on the plantations. Even big enterprises like Nestle and Cargill were astonished when they heard about the conditions that haven't changed a lot, although they campaign for it. Some chocolate companies have their own solutions, such as the Swiss brand Lindt and Sprüngli. Lindt has its own farming program. They help the people who cultivate the cocoa beans by improving the infrastructure of the village and preventing child labor by paying a fair wage for the parents and by supporting the local education. They build schools, for example. They also buy the sugar and the other ingredients of the chocolate from sustainable farming. Lindt is a good example for other companies to create fair situations for all their employees. Another good way would be to boost direct relationships to the local farmers of small sustainable plantations, raise awareness of the serious issues right there, and buy the chocolate beans directly and not from intermediates. But also you, as a consumer, can make an impact by spreading the consciousness among your surroundings. And if you are as shocked now as we are after creating this video, we hope you're willing to pay a higher price for fair traded and labeled chocolate.